Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to Formatted Letters and Email Training. In this training, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to create automated Word documents, and that includes custom formats so that we can easily, quickly format the numbers inside both emails and letters. So it's going to be an amazing training. I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. So let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining us. I can't wait to get started. We've got a ton to show you. In this training, we're going to be creating automated and formatted letters, Word documents, and emails, all with a click of a button. In fact, I have created Word documents before, but there was always an issue on how to format. What if you want your dates in a specific format? What if you want them in a specific currency? Well, in today's training, I'm going to show you just how to do that to get both the format as you want, exactly as you want it, into your Word document, into your email, all with a simple drop-down list. It's going to be a fantastic training. And of course, if we want to send those emails or send those documents, we can do that just with a click of a button into the Word document. It's going to automatically format inside the Word documents, just as I see converting it here. It's going to close, save as a PDF. And of course, the email is also going to be formatted. We're going to be able to show you how to use this, and we're going to create multiple formats with this, showing you how to customize the formatting options. And we're going to show you how to use multiple letter templates and of course, multiple email templates. So we've got so much in this amazing training that we better get started right away. Before we do, there's a few things I wanted to mention. I now have over 100, almost nearly 120 with this workbook. It's going to be 120 workbooks for a single price of just $37. So if you haven't picked that up yet, I'll include the links below. An amazing it says 100, but it's actually a 20 workbook bonus. And that's going to include this training here. I'll make sure to update that to 20. If you'll see it's 19, it's going to be 20 as soon as I add this workbook. You will want to get that. That's just $37. So we want to do that. Of course, if you have not joined yet, please join our dashboard masterclass. Show you how to create amazing single-click dashboards, all with just one click. So it's going to be great training on that. That's a dashboard masterclass. If you haven't seen that yet, all right, let's get started on this training because I know you want to see exactly how we do this. And make sure you download this. It's free if you want it just as a single workbook. Links are down below in the description. So make sure you get yourself a copy of that. And this is really going to be a comprehensive training because we have so much to show you. We'll be creating letter documents, custom documents based on a template. We'll be creating emails based on a template, and we're going to be basically the ability to select specific templates. We will be able to assign a specific type, whether we want to send out a letter or an email, and then we're going to be able to select if we want the specific letter or email template. So there's really a ton of features, and it's really expanding Excel way beyond it ever seen before capabilities, and how to really use this in a powerful tool for business or for personal if you like. So it's a great training. We're going to get started on that. And so also, if you have not subscribed to our channel, make sure you do. I bring these videos to you each and every Tuesday. I try to make them as unique and as comprehensive as possible so you get the best. So subscribing is the best way to do that. So make sure you click subscribe and click the notification icon bell. That way you get alerted as soon as I create these new videos. All right, let's get into it. We've got so many features. As an overview, what I have here is of a customer invoices payments list. It includes basic customer information, name, address, zip code, email, and we've got some invoice dates. We've got currency information where we're showing the invoice amount or balance due. We've got a paid percentage. I just created a table where I want to show different formats. And the idea of is if I want to show a currency in a certain format, I can select the currency and I can change the type of format. So once I select currency, I can select a specific format. Maybe I don't want it with the dollars, or maybe I want a specific currency. We can expand this to show it's much larger table, all the possibilities of this. So there's a lot of options here in this particular currency, or maybe you want a date. Maybe you want a date. So if this was a date, although it's not, like for example, this is, let's change this back to number, and then you'll see there's number options. But if we change this back to date, we're going to get a lot of date options here. So that's really powerful here. And of course, you can edit all of these date options and automatically, not only when you change the options or change the format, does it change the total column, but it also is going to change it in the template we correct. So for example, let's select just an email. It's a little bit quicker. So this one is a letter template. This one is an email. So our first one's an email template. So I want to select that and I want to create it. Now I want to create it. Let's say I want to create a date format that says June 28th, or let's say I really wanted a long date format. I could do that. I can create a date format and just create a long date format. So let's say I can change this one to maybe DDD, which 4 Ds would be the full day and the month, and then let's say I wanted to put in the year here, Y. So that would give us the full day, the full month. So if I select, once I make that change, if I select that one right here, it's going to show the full day, the month. When we create that email, and only the email is going to be created by selecting the macro, we're going to see that the date automatically is formatted based on what our settings are. So it's super easy to use. Even if you don't program VBA, you will want to download this. It's super powerful, creating letters and emails in a click. And most importantly, getting the formats that you want in there. So that is really, really important, because previously we've always been able to add variables to Word, add variables to emails, but formatting was always a little bit tricky, but it's not anymore. Not with this solution that I've created and that you can, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that so that you can not only learn how to create powerful tools like these, but how to use Excel in a more expanded manner. So it's really, truly, really powerful. So I can't wait to show that to you. Let's get started right away on this because we do have so much to cover. All right, it starts off with just a basic table here. In the customers, we also have the templates here users. I kept this very, very simple. I didn't go too comprehensive as far as adding and deleting templates, and I just kept it simple. Basically, the way I have it is if you want to delete a template, you can just click delete. Kind of simple. And then clicking add a template, all it's going to do is just give you the option to add it. So I kept that relatively simple. The same thing for emails. I'm not going to focus on templates here as far as email templates. So basically I kept it simple. All of these are actually the same. But let's say we only wanted first on this 30 day. We would just put in, click first and make sure we complete it. And then all we have to do is add or update that template, and that's going to update so that when we click that one, you'll see it's been changed automatically. I'm going to show you how we do that, but basically the idea is that you can have multiple email templates. There's a dynamic named range called email templates. It's going to cover this list here, and there's a dynamic letter template for this list here. Let's show you some of the named ranges that I've created so you can familiarize yourself with this application. So into the formulas, name manager, let's take a look at some of them. We have email templates. Here's our first one. If we tab over, we'll see that it's a dynamic template, and it's going to consist of these first 5 different templates. So basically using offset, as we always do, count A, we're going to count the numbers, count all the items in this list from 17 to 25, and that's going to get us a dynamic named range. So that way, as this list grows, so does our named range. We have another one here under for the word, we have the same one. So let's take a look at that into the formulas name manager, and you'll see that that is under letter templates. If we tab over here, move it over, you'll see the same thing. We've got offset. So keep that in mind. We have letter templates and email templates, and that's important because when the user selects a specific change, I need this to change, right? So if we look here, we've got this is our email templates. Notice that we have 5 email templates, but what if we change this to letter? If I change this to letter, this dynamic drop down list is also going to change. Look, data validation, we check, we see it's letter templates. Now let's cancel that. Let's change this to email and go back here, data validation. Here we see it's now email templates. So that data validation changes through VBA, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. That way we have a different drop-down list. This would be for emails, but as soon as we click letters, we have a different drop-down list. Now we only have the 3 options for letters for the Word documents. So it's a great way to dynamically change the drop-down list, and it keeps us from having to add an additional column. So it's very, very powerful. So I want to show you exactly how we did that. So basically we have all of our data here. And our data table consists of basically 3 specific rows which you can actually hide. You don't necessarily need to keep these 3 rows visible if you're distributing this table. The first one is the format. What is the format of this column? This is important not only for formatting the column itself, but for bringing that format over to your Word document or your email. So if we change it to a number, currency, percent, date, and time, those are the same options. Now let's say we wanted to have a custom format. We could do that right in here. We can add custom anything we want into this custom format. If we do, it's going to bring it over. So let's say we wanted some strange date field. We wanted the full day. Let's say we wanted the year first. Then we wanted dash, and then we wanted 3 for the day and 3 for the month, right? Even if we want a custom format like that, like a strange one, we could do that. So let's just choose a date field, and then we go click custom, and then we have the one we just created, and it's going to automatically create that date format. And when we create that email, it's going to keep that date format's also going to carry over. It's very, very powerful and really important because we've always struggled with these formats because we have a global community here, and everybody uses a different type of date format, a different type of currency, or a different type of phone number. So there's tons and tons of different formats that mean I couldn't possibly know what you want to use. So I'm giving you the freedom to choose your own formats and make sure that those formats are not only just displayed in the table that you create, but in whatever email or whatever letter that you create. So it's super powerful. This drop-down list changes based on this. So I'm going to show you that through VBA. So if you look here into the data validation, and we see data validation, something called format custom. And what is format custom? Well, that's a dynamic list named range here under custom. But what if I change that? What if I change it back to the date? And now you'll see under the data validation, so we're creating dynamic data validations, and now it's format date. So it's really, really simple, and format date, of course, is based on this. So all we need to do is create some automated data validations. But the first thing I had to do was create some named ranges for this format, and all those named ranges are dynamic. It means they grow. So this named range would contain 4 values, while this named range would contain 9 values. So how do we do that? Into the formulas, name manager, and we'll see every single one starts with format. That's important. And yet they continue with whether it's a time, percent, number, date, custom, and currency. So they're all dynamic format and they're relatively simple. So I've created all of these. I've created the 6 different named ranges, all starting with format and all ending with the title. So that's important. We want to keep consistency here because that's going to really help us in VBA. It's going to let us write a lot less codes when we have that type of consistency here. So we have that there, and we also have another one called format type. And what a format type is, just this right here. It's all 7 of the format types. So when we go back into the formulas, name manager, and we see format type here, and we click, we'll see that we have all 7 of the formats in this, from D6 all the way to that is a fixed range. That's not dynamic. It's not going to grow. So we have a very fixed named range there on just those specific values. Where do we use that? I use that right up here so that the user has the option to select any one of those 7 options here. All right, so we understand that. We know that this is dynamic. Now, general, there is none because there's no specific format. So notice there's no specific data validation, but as soon as we change it, now there is a data validation. So it's dynamic data validation, which is really a powerful tool because it gives you a lot of freedom that you've never had before without actually having to select the cells or use different types. But this is really more powerful, and I like it because of the customization features that allow you to create pretty much whatever you want using this list. All right, so let's move on. So we understand the table and we understand how that's going to work, and we also, in our last row, we have the actual variables. This is what's going to be used in either the email or the Word document. In fact, let me go ahead and pull up one of those Word document templates, and I'll find one under my recent here, which is 10-day reminder here. And you'll see that our Word document is very simple. All it says is hi, first, and last, and these will be replaced by the actual variables. I hope you're doing well. I'm writing this email to let you know your invoice, and then invoice amount, dated on, and then the invoice date, showing that the balance due is paid with payments being so far. your last payment was made on the last payment, right? I look forward to, it's just something very basic. I'm not going to even bother to include these. You can create your own ones. It's very simple. So that is all that is. It's quite simple. So these will match up. We'll just use these, and I've included a list in the templates here. I've just included the same list here. So when you're writing the emails, you can see all the possible variables. Feel free to add your own. Feel free to expand on this table. When we go through the VBA, I'll show you exactly what you need to change in order to make that happen. Okay, so you understand how we can add Word templates, you understand the emails, and you understand the basic idea, but let's get into the nuts and bolts and see how this works. The first thing I want to show you is when we make a change to a specific value inside row 7, then the drop down list changes. I want to show you how we did that. So let's get into the VBA and see exactly how that happened. We can go through the developers tab. If you don't have the developers tab available to you, you can click on the file options, and then in the customize ribbon right here, all we need to do is select the developers and it'll be available then. You can also get there by using the shortcut keys Alt F11. That will get you there. Clicking on Visual Basic will do just that. That's going to get us into our VBA code. Our VBA code is simply made up of 3 different sheets and 3 different modules. So we're going to go through each one. On sheet 1, we're going to focus on something. We're going to make a change, right? What we want is when we make a change to E7 all the way to S7, we want something to happen, right? So the first thing we do is we want to focus on a change event. When a user makes a change, something will happen. And what do we want to happen? The first thing I want to happen is we want to add a specific validation. We have to make sure that we delete whatever validation is there and then add it. So for example, if the user selects currency, what do I want to do? I want to delete whatever's there. I want to delete the value. I want to delete whatever validation is there. And then I want to add a new validation. And what validation do I want to add? I want to add a data validation, call it format underscore currency. So that's what I want to happen. So let's just see just how we make that happen. So again, if we're making a change to E7 through S7, and what is this? This is on worksheet change. Remember, it's not selection change. Selection change is down here. That happens when a user makes a selection of a cell, but we're focused on when the user actually makes a specific change to a value inside a cell, then something's going to happen. We're going to run this code which says on target count large is greater than 1, that exits sub. That way, if the user makes a change to more than one cell, nothing else will run because that could create some issues or bugs. So we always like to add that there. Okay, so if the user makes a change anywhere, any change from E7 to S7, then I want something to happen. The 3 things I just mentioned to you, that's all I'm going to do, just 3 things. The first thing is I'm going to delete the validation 1 row below. Whatever validation, this offset, the target is the cell you just changed. Offset meaning not exactly that cell, but different. 1 cell, 1 row down. This is row, this is column. So the 1 is 1 row down, and we want it the same column, so 0. Now let's say we wanted to go 1 row up, we use -1. Let's say we wanted to use 1 column to the left, we would use -1. And if we wanted to go 1 column to the right, we'd use +1 or just 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the validation, whatever validation is there, and we're going to delete it. Therefore, because that's always important, we cannot change a validation without first deleting it. Now, next up, I want to make sure that it's not general. If it's a general, there is no validation. I left that blank. We have custom, so we can add custom, but general has no validation. So if, assuming that this value is not general, then we can add a validation. For example, there's a validation here, 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 and here. But if it's general, if we change it to general, then there's no validation. But if we change it to something else, there's a validation. So that is, and as soon as we click a specific value, it's going to show here. So that's a very, very easy way to do that. So I want to do just those things, but we have to make sure that we're checking for that it's general. So that's the next line of code. If the target value does not equal general, then we can add addition validation. Then the target, again, the target offset 1 row down, the same column. The validation, now we're adding a validation. Before we deleted it, but now we're adding it. And what are we adding it? We're adding a validation list type. We want a list. And of course, the next option you see, we don't need the next options. They're not necessary for this. Then we're going to assign it a formula. This is the formula. What formula are we assigning it? Equals format. Remember, all of our named ranges begin with format, right? All the ones that we want, when we look under formulas, name manager, all the ones we want begin with formula. And after formula, what is it? Time, percentage, number, date. So we use the target value as the same, as part of it. So it's very easy. All I need to do is to name it to the correct range, just put in the text format, put in the underscore, and then put in whatever the user just changed, which in this case would be currency, custom, date. So it's very, very easy. If you name things properly, it becomes very, very simple as far as code-wise. So all I need to do is enter format and the underscore, then the target value, and that automatically names the range. And the next thing I want to do is I just want to make sure to clear the contents of, whatever validation. This prompts the user to enter a new one. For example, if they go from date to currency, I want to make sure that this is cleared out so that they can enter a new currency. And when they go back to date, I want to enter a new validation of date. So that's really great. It's really important to be able to clear that. And the next thing I want to do is I want to automatically format those things. And let's go ahead. So as soon as the user makes a change, or VBA, user or VBA makes a change to this, what I want to do is determine the last row and format, or actually I think we just format the entire column up to like 99. You can change that to a dynamic if you want, but I want to format this. I want to format all of the values in that. 1, 2, that gives the user confirmation that things are happening, and we know that that was correct. So let's focus on that. That means now we're focused on a change event on row 8. So let's move into that. On change of, of format, update cell formats in the table. That's what I want to do. So now if the user makes a change to E8 through S8, if they make a change there, and we also want to make sure the target value is not empty, they must have actually entered some type of a value. If the target value is not empty, then do what? Then what I want to do is I want to take the first row that we're going to be focused on, 10. There's a range, right? So the first cell in a range and the last cell in a range. What I'm going to do that, the first cell, what is the first cell? Well, it's the target column, whatever column the user has just changed, starting on row 10. Why is that? Well, the row 10 is our first row of data right here. So row 10 all the way, and I just chose a large number. In this case, I chose 99. You can change that to a dynamic. That means you can check the last row, and you can use that, or you can just use a large number. Either way, the last cell would, of course, be the last row of 99 and the target column. So this entire range, I want to set a number format. And what number format is it? And that would be the target value. That means whatever value that's changed. So as soon as I make a change to this target value here, it's going to take that format, that value, and change all of the details below. Very, 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 very simple. So it's really powerful. So that is how we do that. And now also on change of template type. Remember I showed you just a few minutes ago. We also, when we change here, I also want the validation to change here. Remember that? So if we have this as a letter, I want to show a list of letters. If this changes to email, I want to show a list of email, changing the data validation. Again, so I did the same thing again. If we look, if the user makes a change to S10 through S24, then do something. First thing we want to do is target T. T is the column that we're focused on, right? We know they made a change to S, so the next column to the right is column T, and whatever the row that they've changed, the validation, we're going to delete that. Remember, we can't add or update a validation without previously deleting it. So the first thing we always want to do is delete that validation. If we try to replace an existing validation without deleting a previous one, it's going to cause an issue. So again, the first thing I want to do is delete it, and then the next thing I want to do is add the validation. Also T in the target row, validation, I want a list type validation. This time we're going to put the target value. The target value is going to be either one of two options. It's going to be email or it's going to be letter, then templates, email or letter templates. That is the named range. Why is that? Because those are the names that I've used. If you click on the name manager, we see one says email templates and the other says letter templates. So all I need to do is duplicate that name and add it as a formula, and then just make sure to put the equals onto it. So that way when we add in that formula, if we click on the data validation here, we see that it equals letter templates. So all I need to do is add in equals, then the type, then the template. So again, I've just done those three parts. I put those three parts together, equals whatever change the user made, target value, and templates. So that's important. And we also want to make sure that the validation gets added. Once it gets added, the list becomes updated. The only thing I probably should do is clear the value in row T just in case it's a wrong template. Let me do that just as we did here. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear the range, clear contents. That's going to clear whatever's there before, so that probably helps in case they get a wrong template. So I think that's a good idea. Now when we make a change and we go back to letter, it's going to clear those contents so that the user can set up a better one. I think that could avoid some issues. So that's always important. All right, so now you've seen how we've done the VBA. We've got a little more VBA to work on. We also want to be able to send out specific letters or specific emails, and not all of them. And we can do that by selecting specific ones. And how do we do that? Well, the first thing we do is we have to set a specific row that we have selected, and we want to add that into the conditional formatting. So we've used a font here. If we look here, we'll see that it's the Wingdings font here, the U. If we were to enter that manually, you could simply do that, and we could insert a symbol, and that would be this symbol right here, and it's a Wingdings font. So all I did was set this column here to the Wingdings font. If we go into the home, we'll see it's been set to the Wingdings font, and then we just enter the character through VBA. And so what I want to do is, if the user makes a selection to this, I want to do one thing, or I want to add the checkbox if it doesn't exist, or I want to clear it if it does exist. So that's what we're doing in VBA. So let's go over that now. Here, if in selection change, now we're on the same sheet, but we're on selection change. Again, if the target count large is greater than 1, that means if the user makes a large selection greater than 1 cell, then exit the sub. We don't want any VBA to run if they've made a large selection. That avoid errors. If the user makes a selection between D10 and D24, of course you can expand this as you see fit. Nothing, then do something. If the target value is that U with the 2 dots above it, that is our check mark. That is if it currently has a check mark, then clear out the check mark. Otherwise, add the check mark. So if it's checked, uncheck it. If it's unchecked, check it. So that's what this line does. And then what I want to do is I just want to select a different cell. And so I'm going to select using offset. I'm going to select the cell just to the right. That takes the focus off the current cell so the user can quickly make selections to the same cell automatically. So they can quickly select and unselect it. So that's how we did it. But now how does it turn blue like that? When we select it, we're going to use conditional formatting. So if we highlight some cells and we go into the home and conditional formatting and manage rules, we will see that we have a specific rule set up for that. So when we edit that rule, we will see that D and the 10, remember there's no $sign before the 10. That means it's not absolute. That means it's going to cover every row in this table based on what it applies to, as long as the applies to starts in row 10. If it equals U, then do what? That U with the 2 symbols of it. Format it. What we're going to do is we're going to give it a fill color, and that's a dark blue. Then a font. We're going to give it a white font. So it's given a white font and dark blue background. That's how we get that if it contains a check mark. And we click the applies to, we see it also applies to row 10 all the way to S24. And that way it covers all that. We guess we could probably do it to T24 actually. Let's do that, although it says S, but it sure really should be T. Okay, so now when we apply to it, now it'll make sure to apply to the whole table. Okay, so that is how we get that, and that's how we're able to automatically select and color them. So now we know how we select them. Now we know how we change the format, the data validation, and the formats. Let's get off on this sheet and go to the templates where we have some additional features. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is when we make a selection change, something happens. So that's a selection change. So what happens? Well, what happens is I want for this particular table, letter templates, I want whatever row we've selected to go into B5. So you notice how B5 changes. And we use VBA to do that. Now, as soon as B5 changes, so does the conditional formatting. And the same thing for here, email row. So when we make a specific selections to any row in this table, there's a change. So we use conditional formatting. It's the same rules for both. So when we highlight that and we click into home, conditional formatting, and manage rules, we're going to see that there's one rule based on the selection that and that's B5 equals row. Give it the same thing, that dark blue background with the white font. and it's going to apply to E6 through F25. I've done the same thing here except based on a different cell. Conditional formatting manager rules. B6 this time, B6 equals row, and this applies to H17 through J25. So that's how I do the conditional formatting. Okay, so the question is, how is it that when I select a specific row in this table, does the row change in B5, and how do I get this button to show up? Let's go through that feature, and that is also in the VBA, but this time it's going to be, and that's also in the VBA, but this time it's going to be based on the template sheet. So if we select on sheet 2, which is the templates, we've got some code here. Now there's no changes. There's no code based on the changes. There's code based on selection changes. So we're going to go over that. Again, count large greater than 1, exit the sub. That helps avoid errors. If the user makes a selection change between E6 and F25, then something happens. What is it? B5 equals the target row. B5 equals the target row. That means whatever row the user is selecting is going to go into B5. And then I'm going to run a macro called show template button. I'm just going to show you in just a minute. And also, but if else, what if they select out of it? Then I want to hide whatever template button, whatever. I want to hide that button. How does that work? Well, again, if we're selecting in a specific, I'm going to run a macro. That macro is going to display the button, whatever row we've selected. However, if they select out of it, I want to hide that button. If they select out of it, I just want to hide it. So I only want that button to show up when they've selected within this table. Selecting any cell outside of that is going to hide it. Okay, so let's get into that. And also let's go into, again, if the user makes a selection in any cell between H17 and J25, I want something to happen. What do I want to happen? Well, I want to put the row right here into B6. So let's look at that real quick, relatively simple. If the user makes a selection between H17 and J25, I want B6 to show the target row, and I also want to load the email template. That's going to load the template up into the top portion. I'll show you these two macros now, show template button, and then we're going to go into load email template to see just how we did that. Under show template button, if we want to find the macro, locate the macro, all we need to do is right click and click on the definition. That's going to bring us right to that macro, and that actually is in a module called Word Template Max. This particular module contains just two macros. One is going to show the button, and two, it's going to use the button function, which is going to add the word template to the sheet. So I'm going to show you both of those things. Now, adding the template with sheet 2, we're focused on just sheet 2 here. And what are we doing with that? Well, we want to make sure that sheet 2 is B5 is empty. We want to make sure that there's actually a row been selected. That's very important. B5 contains our word row. I can't put in the name and I can't put in the file name, the long file name, if I don't actually have a specific row in B5. So that's very important. We need to make sure that we have that row. So B5 must have a value. If it doesn't, we want to make sure that we exit out of the sub. So the first part checks that. And so the word row, we're going to assign that a value. Word row is going to be B5. That is going to be the, we call it word or template row or letter, whatever. So that's going to be our row for our Word document to go in. Then with shapes, add word template button. That is the name of the shape that I've assigned here. That is the name I've assigned to this shape, called add word template button. So once you give it a name, it's make sure it's very clear we can refer to it. So with that specific shape, what I want to do is I want to do things. I want to place that in a very specific spot, and then I want to make it visible. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to assign it to the left of G, and I'm going to put it to the top of G. Why G column? Because that is actually this column. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over to the left a bit. So it's spaced that way. No matter how big this column is, as soon as we place it, it's always going to be on the right side of that column. It's always going to be placed there. And that's nice. So we have that available to us. So no matter how we change the column, it's going to really be able to automatically reset the button position. So how do we do that? Let's go back into the VBA. So we know how to place it at the top, but now we need to move it over. So we're going to increment it left 90 pixels to the left. 90 negative means to the left. Positive would mean to the right. The top position is fine. We don't need to move it up or down at all. So we just need to move it to the left. And then I want to make it visible. That displays the button based on whatever is in row 5 and G, and then moves it to the left. That shows it, but how do we make it function? How do we open up? Now keep in mind, if you're on a Mac, this code is going to be different because the Mac files is a bit different. So how do we select it, and how do we only select word types? I only want word types in here. So how do we do that? That's with another macro. That macro I have assigned to that button. I know I'm moving a little bit quick, but we've got a lot to cover. All right, Word template we're going to define as a location. That's going to file dialog. That is the pop-up that's going to allow us to select a specific Word document. And then word row is long. Remember, we need the word row. That's very important. That's going to be in B5. And our Word template location is going to be in application file dialog. This is going to help us determine where that is. So it's once we do with Word template location, we've set that as the file dialog picker. We can then set a title, set Word file to attach. We can select specific types. If you want to increase this, you can add like specific document types here by adding different types. Then we're going to go, if the user has not made a selection, I want to make sure to skip these two options. So if they have not made a selection, it's going to skip right down here. Assuming that they have actually made a selection, what I want to do is I want to put the file name, only the file name, the short file name, into column E, and I want to put the long file name in column F and whatever row they've selected. So to get that short file name, we can use directory dir and the selected file. This is the long file name right here, selected items. But when we add directory in parentheses around it, it gives us just the document name in itself. Next up, I want to put the long file name because we need to open it. We're still going to need the long file name, and we're going to put that in column F. So automatically that takes our short file name and puts it in column E, and our long file name and it puts it in column F. That's all that does, really. Okay, next up, let's move quickly through this. I have the ability to create and update email templates. Simply, we can assign a name, we can give it a subject, and we can give it all the details in the message. We can use any of these variables in either the subject or the message. Once we click add or update, it's going to automatically update. So if I want to add a new one, I could just click here, click test one. It's very, very simple. I didn't build this out too much because I just wanted something simple. So I just clear. Now it adds the test automatically. This. If you want to delete it, just clear it. So obviously you can build this out. We can do add new. We can add a lot, but this covers almost everything you need. It's very basic and simple, but it covers everything. And when you select, it just clears it. So let's go over the macros real quick. In this particular macro, all I did is when a user makes a selection, I want to put this value, the template name, I want to put it in H5. I want to put the subject in J5, and I want to put the message in H7. And the only other thing I want to do is if I don't automatically set this to wrap text false, it's going to end up looking like that. So in VBA, we want to make sure that we wrap text equals false, which automatically brings it down. That's the only other important thing. And we do all that through VBA, just those few steps. So let's take a look at that. Into the email templates Mac, we have a few things. We have the load email and we have add email template. So the load email, what does that do? Well, when I select it, it takes whatever in the selector on and puts it up in information. And then the other macro is when I make a change to this, let's say I take out last and just put in a comma. And then let's say I want to get to the next line. I just do Alt-Enter, and let's put that back, in. So Alt-Enter will get us to the next line of the cell. Now I want to save those changes, so all I need to do is click Add or Update, and that does just that. It adds and updates that automatically, quickly. So then when we select another one, we see and select back, all the changes have been saved. So those are the two features I'm going to show you, one to load it and one to save it. So they're in two different macros. The first up is add email template here. So we're going to email row. Remember, that's critical. I need to know what row. And I want to make sure that the user has entered all the values. So if the name, the email name is empty, or if J5, which is the subject, if that's empty, or H7, if the email message is empty, or B6, that is the row, the email row. If any one of those are empty, we're going to just write a macro that says, please fill in all the required email fields and then exit the sub. That's just a little warning to make sure that everything has been entered properly. Next up, what I want to do is I want to assign the email row into B6. And then again, I want to take the fields and bring them up. H in the email row equals whatever's in H5. I, which is the subject, goes into J5, right? And J in the email row, the row, equals whatever's in E7. So that just takes the value. And then wrap false. Remember, we want to make that wrap false, otherwise the row is going to expand too much. All right, so that covers the email template. And now how do we take the load template? Again, the same thing. All we're doing is making sure that B6 is not empty. We need a row. And then we're going to assign the row to the variable email row. And then all I'm going to do is take whatever is in H and the email row and bring that into H5. subject J5. So it's just really basic. All I'm doing is just moving the data from one cell to the other. All right, so that's how we get email. Now let's take a look at how we actually send out those. This is the macro that you've been waiting for. And I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. And that means how do we get to send emails or Word documents and how do we format them accordingly? So let's get into that. First, we need to define a lot of variables because we're going to go through a lot of variables. So I want the last row. Why do we need the last row? Because I need to go through all of the data in these tables, perhaps. Starting from the first row, we could use an advanced filter on this, I guess, eventually, but I just went through all the rows. So what we're going to do is go from 10 all the way to the last row, determine what the last row is, and run through all these. For each row that's been checked, I want to either send a letter or send an email. And based on this value here, if it's an email, we're going to take this template, email template, send an email. If it's a letter, we're going to take this template and create a letter. So that's what we're going to do. So we need the last row, and I also need to know as we move through the rows, I need to know what row we're on. So that would be customer row. Customer column, we also want to know. Why do we want to know the customer column? Because I have to move through each of these variables, each of these formats. So we're going to start out in, I believe, column 5 and go all the way to column 19, I think, which is here. We don't need the templates as far as going through because I need to know all the variables. I need to know the format. So that's really important. So we need to go through each one of those. So I need to know when we run through the column, we need to go through all of these columns. So that's important. The template row, I need to know what row the template is on. Why is that important? Well, I need to know what row. If I'm looking for this template, I need to know that it's on row 6, or if I'm looking for this, because I have to pull up the template. If I'm looking for this email template, I need to know it's on row 18 or row 20 so that I can get the proper subject and the proper message. So we need to know what row the template's on. That's very important. We're going to use find to get that. The cell format, I need to know what that should be. The column format, I need to know what format is going to be that column. So we can set the proper format in either the email or the Word document. And then the template range, that's going to help us determine what the range is. We need to find the template. We need to look for the template in a range. And when we found it, it's going to set us that a found when we found it. So we're going to go through that and look for the template. So that's very important. Also, the document location, I need to know the full file path of that document, and also the variable format. What is the format of that variable? What is the name of that variable string? And what is the value? What are those three things? Well, those are the three things right here. We have the format here, we have the variable name, and we have the variable value. The value would be whatever's in here. Okay, so we need the format. So for example, in this case, the variable format would be d-MMY. The actual variable here would be days. That's what we're looking for in either the email or the Word document. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace it with whatever the date is in whatever specific row that we're on. So we need to define all three of those variable types. And then the template name, I need to know the name if it's a Word document, the file name is a string, the subject and the message, those are important for emails. The current date, let's do this properly, as date. Actually, we don't need those. That's from an old macro. Get rid of those. So we don't need that anymore because they're all variables. The Word document as an object in the Word app, we're doing late binding, so we can do that. Also, let me go through this real probably if you have any issues. Let's take a look at the references I'm using. If you have issues, something might be missing. I'm using Word 16.0, Word 14, 15, 16 would probably work just fine. So I'm using the Word object library. I'm using the Office object library. And I'm using Excel, which is almost always we use. So Office and Word, these two things, make sure you're using these reference libraries. If you don't have them, search down here, look for them, select them. If you see that there's a word missing here, when I send you this file, go down here and make sure you've selected the Microsoft Office, Excel, Outlook library. We're not using Outlook, but we're using definitely Word you're going to need. So keep that in mind. Tools, references, we'll need those available. I try not to use these, but in this case we're using Word, so it's very important to use Word. Okay, keep that in mind. Make sure you haven't used those. All right, so the Outlook and the Outlook Mail, this is going to help us create the Outlook application and create the Outlook Mail. So we also dimensioned the Word content as a word range, so we're going to need that so that we can define what that is. All right, with sheet 1, we are focused on sheet 1. The first thing I want to do is determine the last row of the table. We need to loop through all of the rows. So the last row is going to get us. We're going to use column E to determine the last row. This will get us the last row of the table. In this case, of course, that last row is 24, but on your table, it's going to be different. Now we're going to run our loop for customer row. is 10 to the last row. So this entire loop all the way, I can get rid of this, not necessary. Okay, so that entire loop all the way to next customer row, that is going to be our full loop. So within that loop, we're going to do a lot of work. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. The first thing I want to do is to make sure if it's selected. If it's not selected, we're going to do nothing. So so that's going to go if and if. That means selected row. We want to make sure that the row is selected. If it's not selected, we're not going to send out an email and we're not going to send a letter. So we want to make sure that D in the customer row equals that U, which is the check mark. Next up, assuming that it does have a check mark, we're going to determine the template name into, regardless of whether it's an email template or whether it's a letter template, we still need to define the name. And that, of course, is in column T. Column T is right here. This is our template name, so we need to define that. I need to know the template name. All right, next up, now that we've defined the template name, now I need to know what type. Is it an email or is it a letter? If S in the customer row is email, then do the following. Do what? All of this here, right until this. So you see this selected text right here. All of this is for email, and everything else is for a letter template. And all of this, all the way up until the email, up until this is for Word. So this is for Word. This is for email. So we're going to go through email first. So assuming that it is email, then we're going to do, then the first thing I want to do is get the template row. Now I know the template name. What is the template name? In this, it's 5-day late reminder. But what I have to do is I have to know what row that is on. In fact, in this case, 5 is on row 17. So how do we find it? Well, we know the name, but we need to search for it in the email range. In fact, it's this range right here. I need to do a search. We're going to use find, and we're going to get that row number using find. So we're going to set the range here, determine, we're going to look for where the 5-day late reminder, make sure your names are different, of course. Where is it in this list? Once we find it, it's going to tell us, assuming it has been found, it's going to tell us what row it's on. And we can do that with the following lines of code. The first thing I want to do is set the template range to sheet 2 range email templates. Remember, this is our dynamic named range using offset. That covers all of our email templates. Next up, I want to set the found template range. I'm going to set this range. This is going to be a new range that we're setting, and it's going to be based on looking for something. What are we looking for? Well, the first thing, what are we looking in? We're looking in template range. What are we looking for? We're looking for the template name. We're going to look for the actual values and whole numbers. Now, if it's found, then do something. In fact, this is a double negative. If not is nothing. What does that mean? Cancel those out. That means it has been found. If it's found, then do something. Then do all of this. Because if it's not found, there's nothing we can do. We can't create an email if there's no email template. If it's found, great. Now that it's found, now we can assign the row. The template row equals the range, the row it was found on in the specific range. That is going to get us our row. In this case, if it's looking for, it's going to be 5-day late reminder, it's going to return 17. So it's going to assign 17 to that variable. Once we know 17, I now know what the subject is because that's going to be in I. And I also know the message because that's going to be in J. So we can do that with the following lines of code. The subject equals sheet 2 range I in the template row, and the message equals sheet 2 J in the template. So now that we've got both our subject and our message defined into variables, we can work with them. Now what I want to do is I want to take that subject and I want to take that message and I want to replace some variables. That means anywhere in the subject where the last was found, I want to replace it with James, assuming that this is row 10 we're on. Anywhere that first is found, I want to replace it with John. And then what I want to do in this case, anywhere days is found, I not only want to replace it with 28 July 19, I want to set the format. So I want to do two things. I want to replace wherever days is, but I want to put it where the format is. Okay, so that's very, very important. And so I think that this should probably say due date or something. Days is not really accurate, but you get the point. Due date, and days doesn't make any sense. It should say something like due date, but that's okay for now. You get the point. So it works. So the idea is I want to not only replace the value, but I want to format it. So it's a two-step process. The same thing here, balance due. I want to replace the balance due, but I also want to format it based on whatever format is here. So that's two things we need to do. So we're going to run a loop. We're going to start that loop. And if you look here, we're going to start that loop on column 5 and go all the way to column 19. Why is that? Well, this is column 5 starting here, and this equals column and going all the way to column 19, which is our last variable, which is right here, right here. Maybe you want to have the type in there too. I'm not sure. Equals column 19. So we're going to go through all that. We're going to look anywhere within that email if these variables are found. If they're found, we're going to replace it with whatever the value on the row, and then we're going to format it based on whatever format the user has selected here. So that's what we're going to do, but we're going to do it in VBA. For the customer column, we're going to run a loop, and we're going to do just these three things. If the cells equal general, right, I want to check if in row 7, the column equals general. If it's general format, then the variable format equals general. I just want to reset that there, general. And so if it's not, then what's the format? The format is in whatever is in row 8. This determines the format. Remember, this is a text string. So what is in row 8? Row 8 is the format the user has sent, which is right here. This is the format. This is the format. This is the format. So these are the formats. I'm going to put these formats into a text string so that we can then apply those text formats to whatever's here. So that automatically formats it. So now that we have determined the proper format, whether it's general or something the user has assigned, now it's in this variable. So now we can use a replace. The subject equals whatever the current subject, whatever we've assigned it here, right? Plus, and what are we replacing it with? What are we looking for? We're looking for whatever's in row 9. Whatever's in row 9, we're looking for. What is that? That's here. It's going to be here, here, here. We're going to take this, we're looking for this, and we're going to replace it with this, whatever is in the current row, whatever's in row and the column. How do we do that? Well, we're looking for this. If it's found, we're going to replace it with this. We're going to replace it with this, the cells, the customer row, whatever the value is in the customer row and the row. But I also want to format this. How do I format it? So we're going to use application worksheet function text. The word format might also work, but it doesn't work. This would also work perhaps, but not in every version of it. Format could work as well. Format. That could work as well, but not every specific type of application will cover that, but this is our safe. We're going to use application worksheet function text. This is the same function that you would use within a cell as well. Application worksheet text. And what do I want to do? I want to take this value that we're entering and I want to format it. I want to give it a format of whatever's the format. So this not only replaces the value, but it updates the format accordingly. So we do that through every column, and we do that for both the subject and the message, except the message starts out with this, whatever's here. So we just run this loop, and that replaces not only the variable but the format of whatever we've done. Now we're done. Now we have our new message inside our variable. It has all the right formats and it has all the right data. Now we're ready to create our email. We can do that with just a few lines of code. The Outlook application, we're going to create a brand new application here. We're going to create the email. This creates an email, and then we're going to do something with the email. We're going to set the to as to whatever is in column K in the custom row. In that case, it's the email address right here. And then what I want to do, I want to set a subject, would be the subject and message. And then click display. I want this email displayed. I don't want it sent because I'm showing it for you. But of course, if you do want it sent, you just have to change it to .send. .send will send that email without displaying it. All right, great. So that's all we have to do to create an email. Let's just take a quick look at it, how that works. I want to select only an email template. So I'm going to unselect the first two. This is an email template. Click our macro and it's going to create this email. And it's going to have automatically the update of the currency has been about, the percentages, the date and time here, in case we have that. It's all been formatted properly based on the formats we want. Let's say we want to change that 56 to the dollar. So let's say we want to change this to a different currency. We want maybe the zeros on here. So we can do that right here just by clicking here, and now it changes to dollars. Now if we run that, you'll see that 56 automatically changes to with the zeros. So it's really, really a great, powerful feature. Very user friendly. So even if you want to use this, you can use this, or you can distribute it to your customers. It's very powerful. Now, what if they selected Word document? Let's go into the Word document and see how that works. Else, It's a letter template. So let's see how we do that. Set the template range again. This time we're going to set it to letter templates because I need to know what row the letters are on. I need to know what row. So we're going to set. In this case, we're looking in this range. I need to find the template. I need to know, is it row 6, 7, 8, or 9? I need to find it in this range. Once I found it, I know I can pull it up. I can open it using whatever's in column F. So we need to get that and pull it up. We can do the same thing. We're going to set the template range and we're going to set the found template range, but this time we're going to find the template name again. But remember, the difference is this template includes letter templates, right? We're different range. Previously, we used email templates here. Sheet 2 emails. So we're using the same range, but we're changing it to a different. We're setting it to email. Here we're setting it to email templates, and here we're basing it off letter templates. Those named ranges have already been created. We're going to set it found, and if not found, nothing. Of course, that means if it is found, because we're canceling out those two negatives. If it is found, then we want to do the following. We're going to set the template row to found template row. So for example, in this case, if it's the selected, it's going to be row 6. If we look into customers and we see our first selected, our 10-day reminder document, that would of course be found on row 7. So it's going to find the row and it's going to let us know. And then what I want to do, now that I found the row, I need to pull this information. The file location will be in F and whatever row that is. So that's going to be on our next, the document location. It's going to be on sheet 2F and the template row. We've already defined the template row right here. Now we know the entire Word document file name. That's important because I've got to open it. So the following lines of code will help us open it. On air resume next, that's going to help us in case Word is already running. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure the Word application is actually running. That is the entire application here. I want to make sure that this, if it's running already, I want to make sure that it doesn't create an error. So we want to make sure that it's running, open it if it's not. So on air resume next, in case it's already running, it might create an error. Set the Word app to Word application. This is going to set our Word application, which has been defined as an object, to a Word application. If error number does not equal 0, then we can launch it, create object Word application. If there's no error, we need to create it, or on error. And if so, this is just going to make sure that Word is running. So we want to make sure it's running. If it's not running, it'll open it. Next up, we want to make sure it's visible. I want to make sure that Word application is visible. Sometimes it can be hidden or in the background. We want to make sure it's visible. And next up, we can set the Word document. In this case, the Word document equals Word app. That's the application we just created. Documents, open. What are we opening? We're opening the file name. Of course, this file name has already been defined, so that's important. As the doc location, this is our variable of the entire document location. We'll read only, false. We're not going to be reading only. We want to actually make changes, and we're going to open. So this line of code is going to open it. Next up, again, we're going to run a loop, the same type of loop that we ran, again, from column 5 all the way to column 19. Again, we're going to do the same process, starting in column 5, going all the way to 19, looking for anywhere that the user has put in the word last inside the Word document. Let's pull up the Word document just so we can see take a look at the template itself. Oh, I've got it right here on my desktop. But we can see right here under the 10-day, we can see we're going to be looking for anywhere that it says first and replacing it with the first name, anywhere it says last, and of course anywhere it says balance due. So we're going to be replacing these variables wherever they are found. So I need to pull that up and I need to know the formats, and then I'm going to be replacing it with whatever row it's on. Okay, so let's continue on with our code. So we need to run that loop for all of the columns. Again, if the cell, this is the same format, if the cell is general, then we're going to assign the variable format general. Otherwise, assign whatever the user has put in row 8. Row 8 contains our formats. Remember here, format, that's all in row 8. So we can continue on. Now that we have the format, now our format it's automatically in this variable. We can assign it. Variable name, we can start assigning it. Here is automatically in column 9. This determines the variable name. This is the name that we're going to be looking for throughout our document. And the value is whatever's in the table. Remember, that's the customer row. So for example, if we're creating it for this, let's say row 11, our value, our variable value is going to be in this case, Davis or David or whatever the actual data is. So that's the value that we've created. So that, of course, would be in whatever row the customer is and whatever column as we move through it. Next up, we're ready to bring in the Word document. So what we can do is we're going to look for this Word document and we're going to find, what are we finding? We're looking for the variable name. We're looking for name, first, whatever, all those variables. If it's found, we're going to replace it. What are we replacing it with? We're going to be replacing it with the variable value right here, but we're also going to change the format based on this format. Again, we're going to use application worksheet function text, and we're going to be able to replace not only the value, but we're going to be able to set the format using text. So this one line of code does two things. It replaces the value and it formats the value. So it's really, and then of course we're going to wrap it, which is going to find and continue, and we're going to replace all of those variables. So that if you have multiple variables with the same name, it's going to do this for all of them. And that's it. It's going to continue all of that on. And of course, file name, workbook path, range E. What is the file name? So actually we can bring this down here. We don't need to do this too many times. I'm going to bring this down here. We don't need to do this in our loop for each column. It's going to run faster. That's not necessary. I'm going to bring this one down here. So outside of the loop, the file name is defined based on whatever's E. So this will run a little bit faster. We only need to determine the file name. So let's continue on before we skip ahead. And we can bring the column up. Let's just bring that column up right here. Next column. So now we're going to do this all the way. We're going to run this loop automatically throughout, doing this for each one. Now we're ready. Once we've done this loop, I want to create a PDF automatically of this application so that we can send it to the customer. So I want to encase this file name. We've defined the file name. Let's bring this file name up here. We need to bring it up here. Okay, the file name, I want to set a file name for this particular application. It's going to be this workbook path. That is just the default path of wherever the workbook is. So I'm going to assign a file name. I'm going to use the E and the F. That is the customer name. Again, what is that? I'm going to set that E, which would be the last name, and F. So that's the file name. I want to default to the customer name. Of course, you can set your file name to whatever you want, but I'm using last name and first name. What do I want? I want something like this. I want David Davis PDF. I want the PDF that I create going to look like this. So when we click here, you'll see that the PDF is automatically changed. The formats are changed. Everything here is changed inside. So I'm creating a Word document, and from that Word document, I'm creating a PDF. Of course, you can leave it in a Word document. Of course, that's fine too, but you want to save it as something else in the Word so you don't mess up your template. Okay, so we're going to define our file name. And then what we're going to do is on it, we're going to kill that file name because I don't want it to create an error if the file exists. Let's say the PDF already exists. I want to remove it if it exists. So in that case, we want to kill it. But what if it doesn't exist? If it doesn't exist, it's going to create an error. That's why I've sandwiched it in on error resume next and on error go to 0. Deletes the file name with the same name if it exists. That's what I should write. If it exists. Okay, so if it exists, it's going to delete. And now we're ready to go. Now the Word document, now we're going to take this Word document and we're going to create a PDF from it. So the Word document, export as fixed format, output file name. This is our file name that we just created. And what is the format? It's going to be in WD export format PDF. This creates a PDF of that Word document. Next up, I'm ready to close. I'm done with the Word document, so we're going to close it. And how do we do that? I don't want to save it, right? It's a template. I want to keep that template just as the way it is. So we're going to close it and false, make sure that it doesn't save it. All right, and then we're ready to quit. This closes the specific document and this closes the Word application. So that's how it works. It does that all, it removes it. And so now we have it. We go through this and we do this same thing for each customer row. We check, is it an email? Is it a Word? And as long as it's selected, we can create either an email or a Word document. So let's take a look and see exactly how that would work. If we go up here, now I've got something selected here, and it is a Word letter. It's a Word document. So when we click on the send email, and let's right click that and assign the macro, and you'll see that the macro that's already been assigned is called send reminders. That is the macro we just went over. So canceling that. Now we click this button and we'll see it's going to go through. It's going to open that Word template. It's not formatted yet, and it's going to format it right now. It's going to close it, save it as a PDF. Oh, it's very quick. It's very quick, but let's take a look at the results into our application this is our workbook folder. Here's the workbook I'm working from. Here's what was just created here. If we open this up, we can see what was created. I hope you're doing well. 71, which is 58, a total of 3 being made so far, 3 payments. The last payment was on 7/29. So now it's automatically formatted, automatically created, and automatically created as a PDF. So it's really, really a powerful tool. This allows you to create both formatted letters and emails with any format you want. I hope you have liked this original training. If you do, please share this file. Please like it. I always love your comments. If you have any questions, concerns, feel free to put them in the comments below. And thanks so much for joining. We'll see you next week.